Yep.
Okay, great. I guess I would like to call to order the meeting of the Madison Board of Selectmen for a regular meeting on October 26th. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I tried for a quicker cadence that time.
Okay, great. All right, thank you and welcome everybody. First order of business is approval of the minutes for September 21st, 2020. Wait, that's not right. Am I looking at the wrong document?
October 13th.
October
13th.
Yeah, October 13th, 2020. Did I not copy that right? All right, great. Well, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Second. Okay. Any questions or comments or changes?
Nope.
Okay, great. I'm going to stop share. All in favor of approving the minutes, please, from October 13th. Say aye.
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 Okay, great. I think what I did is I copied the wrong. I opened up the wrong document. So hold on one second. No, that still is the right document. I guess I just messed up here. So let's just move on to the next item on the agenda is my update. And let me just make sure, I don't know what happened here. If I got some things. Nope, this is right. Okay, I will share this. Hold on a second. My update.
Oh, you're looking all fancy with the tie tonight.
There we go.
Everyone looks fancy. Except for me.
It's the only thing holding me
I didn't get the
together.
memo that we were all dressing up tonight.
I know.
We should do a memo with sweats and t-shirts, right?
That's what I'm in right now.
Atta girl, as you should. Well done.
I'm in Selectmen's wear, kind of. So just a quick update. We are continuing to monitor, obviously, increases in COVID positivity rates throughout the state. Additional communities keep getting added to the red alert areas, and those are outlined on the DPH website. I think we've seen a slight uptick for ourselves. I'll be announcing on Wednesday kind of our weekly numbers, but nothing alarming or anything that would change our status currently. But it's just critical once again for the community to understand that it is still out there in the community, continue to do all those social distancing, following the guidelines that the governor's put out. Limit travel out of state if all possible, wear your mask when practical and when you can, when you can't maintain social distancing. And so hopefully we can kind of keep steady here in Madison, but it's obviously concerning some of the trends that are happening across the state. One of the things that last week on the 15th, actually, I submitted a proposal for a capital improvement. I think I put capital investment on here. I wrote these slides quickly, so I apologize. Basically, this just outlines over the next 5 years what projects that we are recommending that the town invest in, capital projects. And so there's a preliminary plan that's available on the town website that you can review that, and includes a letter kind of outlining some of the objectives behind the projects that are listed on the plan. It's an important document, an important process that we go through every year. And so that process in terms of there's a special committee that kind of ushers different projects through CIP and makes a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And that process will be starting soon. And basically we tried to look at everything that was on those lists of projects and go through the town. I met with all the different department heads and tried to get an idea of projects that should be done and talk about what was critical to get done now versus what be something we put on the horizon for later. And so we rejigged some projects around, and also added some projects. And then we also looked at some projects that we thought there might be some grants that we could go after to help pay for those projects. And so, there was a lot of shuffling this year with the CIP. And we also have a bunch of unknowns that we're working with. And number one is what's going to happen with the school renewal plan. And that will have a big impact on how much money we can, as a town, spend on other projects. Also, what's going to happen with Academy. And then some big decisions we need to make on the surf club long term. And we're also conducting a town facility study that is looking at all buildings owned by the town. I've talked about this in different meetings, and that's due to be complete in November, earliest December, with some recommendations about some improvements that might be needed to some of our existing facilities. And there's going to be a lot of other important strategic information that comes out of that study that I think will also help us make some decisions. So you'll be hearing more about CIP going forward over the next couple of months as we get into the budgeting process. Town operations, we continue to stay appointment only until after the election in order to kind of contain and keep a controlled environment while a lot of election work is going on. And also, given the status we are with COVID right now in the state, we thought that it was prudent to maintain appointment only. Election activities are continuing, and you'll get an update tonight from the town clerk and the registrars. Another thing we've talked about a few meetings now about being able to hold a town meeting if we need to do that, as well as offer the public, having in-person meetings for the publics now. And the governor issued an executive order about 10 days ago that outlined the ability to offer hybrid public meetings, which would mean some people are in person and some people are remote. That's going to require some technology to make that happen, and also some processes that we'd have to put into place. And then specifically for a town meeting, which is something where we actually vote on when we're at the meeting, we need to figure out a secure way to allow people to vote either remotely or in person. So it's a bit complicated, but luckily some of our CCM, which is and COST, which are groups that are there to help towns figure a lot of this out. They're going to be issuing some guidance soon, I think, on how we can make this happen. So stay tuned, because I know everybody's anxious to kind of move forward out of this Zoom mode as quickly as we can. Also, we're waiting to hear back on the early retirement incentive programs that the town undertook last month. Some employers are making their final decisions. I think this week and next week we'll be getting some answers on those. And then depending on what the answers we are getting from different employees, we're going to be making some possible changes to the organizational structure, to how departments look. And there'll be more to come on that at a Board of Selectmen meeting, probably towards the end of November. So that's kind of still an all in process, and we're still trying to finalize where we are on that. Just a community note, trunk or treat, because I know a lot of people were interested in this. We are doing the police department, along with the Chamber of Commerce, is doing a drive-through event at the Surf Club from 3 to 5 this Saturday. And so whereas the children and their families would be in the cars driving through, and the participants would have decorated trunks and hand out candy to the cars. So details are available on the Madison Chamber website if you want to attend and plan on attending that. And then finally, downtown trash has always been an ongoing topic. We were able to figure out a way to get some additional pickups scheduled downtown that were not part of the original contract. So hats off to Scott Erskine for working out some additional ability to get things picked up. And so hopefully that might help alleviate some of the complaints I know we've had continually over the last 2 months or so on the trash situation downtown. So that's kind of it for updates in terms of what's going on in Town Hall. And with that, I will turn it over to any liaison reports or selectmen comments. I'll stop this share here. Anybody have any updates?
I'll go first if nobody else has got anything. The EDC, the Economic Development Commission, has approved and is going to be awarding a bid for a first ever Light Up Madison during the holidays. they're going to take some of their budgeted money and put it towards brightening up the downtown area. It should be nice. I know that there are several merchants also looking to participate in their own way. So I expect that there'll be activities announced, events announced, and maybe even decoration beyond what the EDC is planning with merchant participation. So just trying to do something to create a little excitement downtown during the holiday season, bring people down, of course, to brighten up and bring some vibrancy, but to also hopefully bring some business to our local businesses.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any updates?
Just real quick, I guess Aaron and I are going to be starting CIP this week. The kickoff is actually, I think, Wednesday, Aaron, is that right? In the afternoon. So just a start of the process to outline the schedule and kind of figure out what the landscape looks like, but we're getting going.
Okay, great. All right, I guess we can move on to any citizens' comments. Lauren.
If there are any residents on who would like to make comment, please raise your hand and I can allow you to speak. Okay. Joan Walker, you should be able to talk now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great, thank you. This is actually on behalf of myself and Amy Stefanowski as chair of the Madison Democratic Town Committee and as chair of the Madison Republican Town Committee. So as the chairs of the Republican and Democratic Town Committees, we want to thank the town clerk, the registrars, and their staffs for all the hard work to ensure every vote is accurately counted in Madison. We appreciate the thoroughness that has gone into scaling the detailed process for the thousands of absentee ballots issued during this pandemic. Although we appreciate the efficiency in having one absentee ballot count, once all the absentee ballots have been received and checked, we would like to strongly encourage a partial count of those ballots received and deemed valid. It was explained to us that uncounted absentee ballots would be stored in a box and put into the vault to be counted on Wednesday in one large group. If the process has gotten to the point where these ballots are being boxed, then why not put them through the tabulator and get them counted? These can be treated like any other polling place with count sheets and ballots secured in the vault. Then Wednesday morning would be a very focused count of only those that were placed in the ballot box from Monday night through Tuesday at 8 p.m. We would also like to note that we have agreed to limit the number of observers from each town committee at the absentee ballot count on each of the days that processing and counting of these ballots to no more than 2. We thank you for your time and again, thank all those involved in this process. That's it.
Okay. No one else has their hand raised. You can keep going.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your comments. Next item on the agenda, and as you know, Joan, I think that actually we will have the town clerk and registrar on here in a few moments. Next item on the agenda is discuss charge for Charter Revision Commission. And what I'm going to do is just share. I don't know why I'm having such a problem today with this. I do it every week. I just was going to put up here. This was what I shared last time we talked about the Charter Commission and what was sent around to the board last week. And this was basically what had already been approved by the Board of Selectmen back in August of 2019. And then there had been no committee members appointed. So I think as a starting point, the thought was using this as a starting point and seeing if we wanted to make any additional changes or amendments. Obviously, we need to talk about a date, a deadline for them to submit their proposals to the town clerk. And there's a whole process, which is also here, we had talked about, a few weeks ago. This is just the same thing that I presented before. And I think the board had kind of come to a conclusion that the traditional path, rather than fast tracking this, would be a better way to go through the charter review process. So this might be helpful just for reference as we talk about the deadline. So I don't know, does anybody have specific comments that they would want to make to this charge? I open up for discussion.
Peggy, it's curious that when we first created this charge, we never mentioned the public. I think it indicates here that the commission should listen to a variety of elected or appointed folks as well as town staff. Maybe it goes without saying that they also should solicit the public.
So I think by statute, they have 2 public hearings, at least 2. And that's part of the timeline, I think, that we've seen in draft. So I think we'll probably solicit, at least two public meetings out, and depending on the topics, we can suggest that they hold more, or they can hold more at their own discretion.
And aren't all meetings public meetings anyways?
Well, they have
meets?
They have hearings where they're soliciting input from the community and then incorporating that into.
No, I understand, but when they're meeting in general, I mean, the public can attend that as well, right?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that it's a public meeting. Yeah.
Yes, their meetings are all public.
I guess I just had a question on the overall charge, in the sense that it seems pretty simple and buttoned up. Is there any need for it to get down to the level of specificity where it's pointing to, inclusion of our strategy and our, the existing charter, and, just some of the different documents that we have? I mean, what level of specificity is typical in these types of documents? I frankly just don't know. So,
Is this language just taken from the statute?
It looks like this may have been taken from prior charges.
Oh, it is. Well,
Yeah,
but is it taken from the statute as far as the first paragraph?
it sounds very legal lingo.
Well, it's very narrow. I mean, it's not. It's just
Is it better to have it narrow or more specific? I guess I don't know in this case.
Well, I think it's governed by the statutes, right? So.
Right. So I think their charge should just reference that.
Yeah.
That whatever authority that they've got per the statute. So I mean, and I think the way it's written works. The dates obviously need to be changed, but and then we get in the hook that they should consider input from the Board of Selectmen. I mean, when they submit it back to us, we're going to have to make some decisions about it and then send it back to them. So ultimately, they will have to consider our input, but to solicit it along the way probably is productive.
I mean, I read this as very simple, but maybe in some ways simple is better.
Mhm.
I know in the charges that we've given to our ad hoc committees, we've been very prescriptive and given a lot of detailed guidance. But I think for purposes of this, I think to give them discretion is helpful. Broader discretion. I think when I read this, I had the first thought that Al had also, that, we don't talk about the public, but you're right, there is the public hearing. So that is, I mean, I think though, it doesn't say that you have to consider the recommendations from the public. So you're hearing them, but are you absorbing them and amending them? And I guess, I don't know. My thought was
I wonder if, just thinking out loud here, but knowing that the past chair was Joan Walker, and I believe she's in the audience right now, might we bring her into the conversation and we could potentially ask her a couple of questions?
Is the board okay with that? Since she was on the last one,
She might be
I'm
able to
fine with
shed some light into the
Yeah.
level of specificity here.
that. Joan, are you available to join us for a few minutes?
I'm fine with adding the public if that is what's, you know, what's in the statute. I don't see any reason not to include it in here, to reiterate that. I mean, again, I think we should just stick with what the statute says as close as possible.
Mhm.
But if that's part of the process, then I have no objection to adding that in here. Recommendations from the public.
If you'd like, I can speak to what happened the last time. We had 3 separate public hearings and received input. All the meetings are open anyway. We invited Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance specifically to represent people in the meetings as well, and to review specific changes that were being discussed in those areas of the charter. 90% of what is done is just cleanup of language to make it simpler, more easy to read. And then we just wanted to get to a point in the last charter review to do a couple of changes, and based on what we were hearing from the public in the public hearings. And so we organized them, and there's a timeline, and you really do have to lay out an entire timeline so that there's notices on the public hearings. You set the timelines, you send it back to the Board of Selectmen. I'm not sure for comment or for approval. And, you know, I don't know if it goes back and forth. I think the final version that went to the Board of Selectmen, because there were people on the Board of Selectmen and people on the Board of Finance within the committee itself. So that was a little bit different.
Oh,
So,
really? So who sat on the committee? You had Board of Selectmen on the actual Charter Review Committee?
yes, there was a
Sit in-
Democrat and a Republican.
Oh, okay.
So it was,
And then weren't there objections to that at some point in the, or am I remembering incorrectly? I thought when we talked about this.
not when the,
Go ahead, Joan.
at the time, it wasn't objected to until after the final version went out, and then it became a political thing. But
Yeah.
at the time, it was fairly balanced, and it was equal numbers of people, Republican, Democrat. It was actually because the Republicans were majority, it was a Republican majority on the committee. But they elected me chair. So it was a pretty a very bipartisan approach.
Mhm.
Change was made, literally paragraph by paragraph, approve, disapprove in the final version that actually went back to the Board of Selectmen. And the Board of Selectmen chose to move forward as it was versus, and let the people vote on what the change. But it went down.
Well, and I guess, you know, I leave this to the 3 board members here who voted on this in August of 2019. You know, do you think that there was something, because like I said, I think to be less detailed here is probably better. That allows some flexibility, and it gives the commission the opportunity to, you know, it doesn't tie their hands at all. But, you know, and you guys voted yes on this, you know, a year ago. So I guess I look to you why you'd want to make changes now.
I'm comfortable with the way it is.
Okay.
I think it's fine, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
comfortable as well.
Okay.
One thing I just wanted to point out is that it doesn't in any way reference the committee that was formed, which was new this time around. That,
Mhm.
That's actually a great point, Aaron.
Yeah.
It probably should.
Yeah.
and I don't know exactly what we want to say. We're not going to say that the commission has to follow anything, but do we somehow acknowledge that committee?
As input, maybe.
Maybe is like evaluate the the proposals or the
Right.
recommendations. So I don't what the suggestions. made by the government. Ad
Yeah,
hoc
and the
study.
analysis. I mean, they did an analysis.
Yeah. And maybe saying, consult and, evaluate the work completed by the ad hoc government studies committee, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No, I
sounds
think that's
good.
a good point.
I
Yeah.
think we should acknowledge them in some way.
Okay. I mean, I'd be comfortable with a sentence on that. And then otherwise, I think the date issue, and Joan, I'm just curious, when you guys went through your process before, did you have a targeted date that you were supposed to get it to your revisions to the town clerk by?
Yes, so that it could be put on the ballot with an election, so either the budget referendum or the November election. So there wasn't going to be a separate charter review vote. And it ended up being in the November election. So you basically work your way back from that date as to what has
Yeah.
to go to the Secretary of State so it can be on the thing. And then you work back the public hearing, how many public hearings you want, and then how many meetings. We started, I think, I want to say, I thought October or November, and we were meeting every other week for a while because there is language cleanup that was pretty detailed in there. So yeah.
Yeah, and we've got kind of a, if we go by the timeline, this was kind of mirrored to what your committee had gone through, I think. The date that would be in here would be submitting it to the town clerk, which is, I think it was October was when I remember looking at this.
Yep.
Number 8. To send to town clerk. And here it's saying, October 23rd, which that's if everything lines up and we were to launch this. I mean, could we just give a month, like say September 2021? And that would give them some flexibility. It's obviously not going to be in time for the next November, but I think we all decided we didn't want to like cram this in to hit the November ballot.
Yeah, so given that there are a lot of gates that are timed in these intermediate steps, and Lauren's done a great job of capturing them, although I'm a little fuzzy on it all. I'm wondering if we shouldn't pick a desired date for a referendum and then work the timeline backwards from that. And given that we're guaranteed to miss the November, should we just retarget the budget referendum as a date for the vote on this?
I mean,
Which would be November?
Yeah, Bruce,
No,
are
it
you
would be in
thinking about
It would be the spring. It would be the spring budget vote.
yeah, it'd be
Like a May thing?
May 2022.
Hmm.
I mean, I think part of it is that we have some other possible referendums too, which we don't really know when those might happen. So arguably you could say, well, this could get if like the schools were going to be on a different date than the budget referendum or something, you could put this on this, although it can't be, right? It has to be we have to get at least 15% of the, there's a rule, I guess, if I recall now, that you have to at least have 50% turnout. So, which is possible.
That's why we went for November.
Yeah.
Because
And
you
so,
can guarantee it in November. There
Right.
have been times when the budget has gone below.
Right, so you're potentially shooting yourself in the foot if you do it in May, because there won't be enough turnout.
and there may be, because this might drive it, but you are right. You're gambling a little bit. And I'm not, maybe we do decide to do that. We have a lot more registered voters now in Madison, and maybe we'll get all these people interested in coming out to vote at our referendums or our budget referendum. I'm just wondering, Bruce, rather than tie it to that piece, which can be quite tricky depending on a lot of different factors, a referendum, sticking to the town clerk submission. I mean, we could make it as broad as possible. We could say by the end of 2021. Because I
There
also
is-
look at, sorry.
There is a cutoff for how long the committee has to do their work, though. They can't just
Okay.
go on indefinitely.
Once it's appointed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I believe it's 16 months.
Okay.
Hmm.
So that would still work though, if we appoint, if we were to, I mean, today is just discussed, so we would be voting on it at our next meeting, on the charge. And then, we would appoint, so by the end of 2021 would get adequate. And the thing is, if the committee gets going really quickly and chugs along, we could be looking at a very different, timeline than, 2022.
So
You know,
then
we-
if
I
it's-
like your proposal, Peggy. I think by the end of 2021 sounds reasonable. I think past experience tells us that getting this committee appointed, all the interviewing steps are probably going to take a little longer than we think. So it seems to me we would be well within the 16 months if we accomplished this by the end of 2021.
And that would probably end up aligning to a May referendum date if we choose to go in that direction, but it doesn't tie our hands to it either. What are your thoughts, Bruce?
Well, yeah, and my thinking is there is an expiration on it. Lauren, what is the expiration between when it's submitted to us or when we vote on it as a board and when it goes to referendum?
Meaning, when does the counter start?
Yeah, so there's an expiration date on the committee itself, but I believe there's also a requirement to hold the vote within a certain amount of time of us taking action, of the board taking action.
Sorry, I have to go between two different platforms here. I was trying to pull up the state statutes while I was going, but I do have the note in the timeline that it is within 15
Yeah,
months.
15 months. So of number 14 though, the town clerk. So not when we start the process.
No, that you have to have a referendum date within 15 months of when you publish notice of when you send the referendum question to the town clerk. So you will approve the draft in whatever form, whether it's revised or not, and send the referendum question to the town clerk. And then no later than 15 months after that, it has to be the referendum date.
So between number 8 and whatever is 15 months,
So that
not
could
from when
be
you start the
November-
delivery.
Sorry, Scott.
No, it's okay. It just
That
sounds like the 15 months starts much later in the process.
Right. So I think a late 21 finish would give us the opportunity to piggyback on either a bonding referendum that was happening or the budget referendum if we needed to kick it down to that one. I mean, it sounds like it could even go to the general election in 22. Not that I'm suggesting that, but that would be inside of the 15-month window.
Yeah, you're right.
presumably.
Mhm.
So it sounds like maybe just putting in here by the end of December 31st, 2021 would work and gives a lot of flexibility. And then we will add a sentence on referring to the ad hoc committee and send around that. And then the other thing would be the 7 members. And maybe we can talk about our next meeting, how we would go about appointing them, but that doesn't have to actually be in the charge. And then we could vote on this at the next meeting. Does that sound good? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. We'll keep it simple and we'll circulate a revised draft and then we can plan on taking action at the next meeting on this. Okay, great. Thank you. Next is election update from the town clerk, Nancy Martucci, and I think we also have the registrar of voters on. So I will stop my share. And everybody on board here. Okay, great.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you.
So Nancy, I thought,
You're on.
I thought it might be helpful just to kick off with the kind of where you are on absentee ballot applications and all
Okay.
that.
Okay. So as of today, we have processed 5,957 total applications, and ballots returned to us are 5,294. So
That's
we're
ballots
seeing
returned or
a lot
ballots
of change
sent
now.
out?
I'm sorry,
Ballots
what was
returned.
that, Bruce?
Yeah, was that ballots received or ballots sent out?
So ballots sent out are 5,957 based on the applications that we received. And the ballots returned are 5,294.
I'm assuming they're still rolling in every day.
Yes, every day. We're seeing a few hundred coming back every day. And anywhere from, well, it seems like we have an uptick right now where people are still sending in applications looking for a ballot.
Nancy, what percentage are arriving by mail versus being dropped off in the drop box?
I don't have an exact percentage, but
Yeah,
more are coming through in the Dropbox.
Mhm.
Yeah, much more through the Dropbox. And that's a better process right now. We are finding people telling us that they have not received a ballot in the mail. It has not arrived. So we're doing requests for second ballots. And then we're actually finding a couple today applications that were actually mailed to us weeks ago that we're just receiving. So we're dealing with a lot of phone calls right now and finding the status of ballots that were not received and addressing those circumstances.
Nancy, if somebody requests a ballot, are they obligated to use it, or can they still go vote in person? It's just one vote, right?
But they, even if somebody actually has a ballot in their hand, an absentee ballot, and they decide that they would like to go to the polls on election day, they can. Until that ballot gets back to my office, it is not cast. If they, and again, we've talked about this, they have until 5 p.m. on Friday night, this Friday, to pull a ballot. At that point, everything is considered, secure in my office, and will go through as an absentee ballot. And anything that is that comes in the office after 5 p.m. on Monday night and throughout the day on Tuesday will be held. So the register of voters will have a list with all the A's on it, meaning that there's an absentee ballot here in our office that they'll be printing out at 5 p.m. on Monday. And then if somebody were to go to the polls, they're going to see that they have already voted. Then from Monday evening at 5 p.m. through Tuesday at 8 p.m., if an absentee ballot comes in, it will be held until we get the voter checkbooks back. And those will be reviewed on Wednesday morning to see if anybody actually went to the polls instead. And if that's the case, then a ballot, or the absentee ballot, will be pulled and rejected.
Thanks. I was just asking for a friend.
Okay.
Nancy, what advice would you give to somebody who has mailed in their ballot and on election day is worried that somehow it hasn't been received or it got lost? Short of going to the polls and seeing an A next to their name, is there anything they can do to satisfy themselves that their ballot's been received?
Yes. So on the Secretary of State's site, someone can go and look up under voter registration. They just put in their town, their name, and when that comes up, I believe it's their date of birth. And when that comes up, just below their registration information is an update on the town clerk receiving their application, that their ballot was sent out, and then that their ballot was also returned to my office. And if somebody is having any trouble and can't find the information on the website, they can certainly give us a call. And as long as our CVRS system through the state is up and running, we can actually look that up and tell them. Otherwise, we'll take their name and number, and as soon as we can check it, we'll call them back.
I'll say something here. That site is very anal. So if you're I had a guy today that his name is Frank, but he's registered as Francesco. So he can't find himself on the site.
How interesting.
And if there's a typo, you have to repeat the typo. So it's incredibly anal, and we have a lot of questions. People coming in saying, I can't find myself on the site.
Right.
And and they're always there, but they just have to know precisely how they registered. And it can be a challenge. So it's not the easiest thing. Also at the polls, we're going to try to give an extra checker book for somebody to go up and down the line to try to identify people that are there because they don't know about their absentee ballot, to find out if they have an A by their name and whether they should just leave or whether they should stay in line to vote. We actually are anticipating a lot of people to come in that don't know their status. And the rule is you get the vote as long as you don't have a red A. And then we'll pull the absentee ballot if it shows up.
And that's what I can imagine, because we've got what close to potentially 50% of the electors will have submitted. Ideally, they will substantially stay away from the polls because they've already voted. So if we can provide them with a way to verify that their vote was received, then
I think the town clerk is going to get overwhelmed on Monday and Tuesday about, is my ballot been received?
Yeah, we're already getting a lot of calls. We literally fielded calls all day long. And I just finished calling some people back.
Yeah. There's another issue too. I had a few people wanted to do an absentee ballot application and they weren't in the system. And when we looked for them and they said, oh, I just checked online and I'm on registered, and they're looking at these sites that are getting information that's not accurate. Like maybe they were taken off a few years ago, because they didn't respond to a canvas and so on. So there's people that think they're registered because they're not checking our site or the state of Connecticut site. And that may pose a problem too if they show up at the polls and they're not registered. So we're gonna have to deal with that. We have something in place for that. We have election day registration that we're gonna have. So hopefully we won't run into that, but we've got, a way to handling that if that does happen.
Can I ask you, I know you can register online and tomorrow is the deadline to register. Did they shut down that site?
Yep, 12 noon tomorrow night.
Okay, so then you're not going to have that issue where people go online 2 days later and then they try to come in and register on election day registration.
No, but what you have is you have other registrars that are cleaning up what they got on Tuesday, on Wednesday. So your voter roll is in flux for at least 2 or 3 days.
So people that might be
registered. Well, no, another registrar, a registrar, like right now we have 42 people sitting in the queue to be registered. So if I don't do those till Wednesday, the other town's not gonna know I'm taking that person or registering that person. So they could lose a voter. And the same thing could happen to me. Somebody from Madison moved and they registered online and it doesn't get processed on Wednesday or Thursday. So the voter roll stays in flux for quite a while.
Any questions from the board?
Given the unprecedented amount of absentees and taking into account the statement from Joan and Amy, Bill, could you just explain your expected process for tabulating the absentee ballots?
Okay, Paula has deferred to me. So, but this is our process.
Well, he's got the statute in front of him too,
Yeah,
so.
we've got 3 legal issues. We've got 9-150B subpart B, which is a statute that basically says that we can't release anything till all counting is complete. We've been in contact with the Secretary of State, and they have not gotten back to us. When I talked to the Secretary of State's representative today, they were unaware of the statute and could not resolve it. Okay.
Wow.
So
A little
we're
disturbing.
waiting on that. All right. Now, it could be confused with another statute. We centrally count our ballots. It could be confused with another statute where if you count them at the polls, you release the absentee numbers because you have to complete the poll count. But when you're centrally counted, the law says basically you can't release anything until you're completely done. My second problem is it's the 14-day rule on tabulators. I only have 8. I'll be using 1 for EDR for sure. I'll be using probably 2 to 4 at the polls, which accounts for 5. That leaves me 3 tabulators. For every count that I do on the absentees, I need 2 tabulators. That means I get 1 count if the polls use all theirs and the EDR. That leaves me with 3 tabulators. I can do 1 count on the ABS. If I do that Tuesday night, I will be hand counting everything on Wednesday and Thursday, which is not really, I think, what anybody wants. Because I don't think I'm going to get through 5,000 ballots on Tuesday.
Probably closer to 6,000.
Yeah, I'm not going to get through that backlog on Tuesday. The best we've ever been able to get through is like a presidential is like 2,000 ballots. So we're going to have a backlog of ballots coming out of Tuesday into Wednesday. We're going to pick up more ballots that were sent in on Tuesday on Wednesday. So if I try to do something Tuesday night, if I'm allowed to by law, then I'm going to burn my tabulators and I'm going to be doing everything by hand. That's my other problem. The other thing I have is there's a rule that says if you applied for an absentee ballot with the excuse that you were going to be out of town and you are in town, you are supposed to go to the town clerk and pull the ballot by 10:30. So I've got to keep my ballots, my outer envelopes and my inner envelopes together till at least 10:30 to be able to pull a ballot if I have to pull it.
Yeah. Once you separate those 2 things, you can't
tell.
Some people sign their name that you can read what it is, but most of them it's like just like a squiggle. There's no way to be able to find that ballot once you separate them.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, if I did release a partial count, and the idea that you can just run them through a tabulator, no, a tabulator has to be opened and it has to be closed to get the result. Once it's closed for 14 days. I can't reopen it. So once I burn one, it's burned. So even if I wanted to give a result Tuesday night, I would have to burn 2 tabulators to do that.
What is the expectation that you're trying to help the public understand about when the results will be known? What should the public's expectation be?
I think the best guess that we've been able to, it's contingent on facts we don't know. We're kind of estimating Thursday morning is when we're going to get the absentee count done. Okay. And the reason is that we're kind of, that's a little bit of a guess that hopefully on Tuesday, the dump truck doesn't back up at town campus and dump a bunch of ballots on us. Okay, because that just increases the backlog. And hopefully that we'll be able to work through the 5,000 or 6,000. Probably most of it get started on Tuesday. Get our staff is not our usual staff that we normally use. They have to be trained. Our normal staff that knows exactly what to do is not of the appropriate age to be exposed to what's going to happen. It's going to be a very close quarters. People, they have to work in pairs. So the COVID restrictions and all that, a lot of our older poll workers decided not to work. So we have a bunch of new poll workers. We adjusted the process to better trap what they do to make sure that they do it correctly. that we don't want them to reject a ballot they shouldn't reject, but we want them to reject the ballots they should reject. So we've broken the process down to a very small set of rules at each step so we can watch them and make sure they do it correctly. Also, if they do reject the ballot for not being on the rolls, we will do a complete search to make sure that that person hasn't moved and they're just looking on the wrong street. Happens at the polls all the time. So we have that process, but it's a very difficult process. And as I say, in order to get a result out of the tabulator, I have to close it. And as soon as I close it, it's closed for 14 days.
Can I ask you, Bill, like, and Paula,
Yep.
The tabulator issue, how do we decide how many tabulators we have? Because I would think every town in Connecticut has the same problem then you're highlighting, right? So are we, do we, is it an issue that we don't have enough tabulators?
Well,
And
and
other towns have more-
normally we
more
do have
reserve
enough.
ones?
This is just, who knew what was going to happen with
Right.
this COVID-19? I mean, we've never had, that many absentee ballots, and
Right.
we've
No,
had-
I understand that. I'm just trying to understand because other communities are saying that they're going to be counting on Tuesday. So they're going to be facing the same challenges you are. And
Right.
so,
And I honestly don't know how they're doing that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when tabulators were put in, you got 2 tabulators for each district. So that meant we got 2 for District 1, 2 for District 2, and we centrally counted. So we got 2 for the absentees.
okay.
Then when they kicked EDR in, I scavenged 2 machines to support EDR. So I got up to 8.
Mhm.
And so for the longest time, 8 had been more than enough. And even if they broke, I still had some in reserve, and they do break. I've had 2 or 3 of them give up at an election. So,
Bill and Paula, am I correct that the tabulators and the number of tabulators are determined by the Secretary of the State?
I don't know that.
she doesn't know.
The number of machines that we have.
The
is
machines
that-
that we have were given out under a federal grant, and that's what they decided.
Right. So it wasn't a local decision. That was made at the state level.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy tabulators, they're $2,500 a pop. But I think they're out of production, so.
Yeah, I don't recall that they're making them any longer. I'm pretty sure they don't.
I think they were brought in, what, in 2002 or
2,
something,
yeah.
or 03?
Well, I think you've obviously, first of all, I wanted to say you guys have been working your tails off, and I know that. I see you in town hall, both you and Paula, and then Nancy as well, who's there 7 days a week, 24/7 sometimes. It's a tremendous amount of effort that's going into this whole election this year because it's so different than anything we've had to manage before. And I know you've had to really think through every little tiny step in the process and manage it very differently because of the volume. And I know Nancy always talks about, we've always had absentee ballots. So we understand absentee ballots. We just have never had to deal with them at this volume, right?
Right.
So it's really volume management and how do we handle that volume?
Yeah, I would say that Nancy by far has the heavy lift at this point. My heavy lift doesn't really come till election day. I've got a lot of stuff that builds up to election day to make sure I can do what I need to do. But Nancy's effort is by far multiples of what ours is at this point. I think the biggest challenge that we're facing to get this done is just pure volume. If you figure out that we have 6,000 absentee ballots to process, that's 18,000 pieces of paper. Those 18,000 pieces of paper have to be sorted, retained for record purposes, and produced. If we have a recanvass, they have to be produced, all the outer envelopes, the inner envelopes, the ballots, the rejected ones, they all have to be accounted for. And it's not just a process where you zip open an envelope and throw a ballot through the machine. Also, you have to remember, absentee ballots come folded. Folded ballots and tabulators do not get along, okay? because the fold causes just enough of a resistance to cause the ballot to get rejected. So you have to backfold every ballot to get it to go through. The next problem is that when we test the absentee ballots, they're produced by the IVA system. So they're produced electronically and printed, and we test with those. Those ballots, when somebody's sitting at their house, I don't know what they're using to mark it.
Or what they spilled on it.
Or what they spilled on it, okay?
We've seen a lot of that.
So you get pencil, you get paper, you know, a blue pen, a black pen, and every ballot has to be screened to make sure it's tabulator ready, so the person that should get the votes gets the votes, all right? So it's not like they're poll ballots, which are very nice and neat and produced with the pen that we want and all that. These things come in really random. Sometimes they're mashed up, and there is going to be counting by hand that has to be done. So, and you know, we will start the tabulator throughput before we finish processing, but we want them to end roughly at the same time, because that way then you got the optimum process. We don't want the tabulator to be, you know, just feeding ballots through, except for the ones that are kind of the last in the process at the end. It's not like we're holding everything and say, okay, we're done, stop, pull out the ballots, we're going to start shoving them through. No, we'll start shoving them through as soon as we can reasonably shovel them through. You don't want to waste a tabulator tabulating 500 ballots when you got another 5,500 to go. That's just not really good use of resources.
So I think that, you know, there's a lot of details and a lot of like minutia in terms of the process that Paula and Bill and Nancy are experts in, and they know it inside and out. I will say that you've proven that to me in different discussions we've had. And I think the important thing is everybody should just feel confident that, you know, things are going to be counted accurately and securely. And that when the town announces a result, it'll be an accurate result. And so, you know, I don't know if there's any more questions for the board, from the board to the registrars or the town clerk.
How many new voters have come in? You may have said this earlier, but do we have a significant amount of new voters registered during this, you know, last 4 months?
We're having a significant number of new voters. I think we're up probably just a little above 14,000 now.
Yeah.
I'd have to check it. That's not a number I keep track of. I just keep shoving them in.
Do you know what the delta is though, Bill? You know, is it a couple hundred new? Is it?
Oh no, it's more than that.
Way more than that.
It's like 1,000 new or something.
Wow.
I can get you that number. The issue is that the biggest problem we're having actually is people just keep re-registering for some reason. They seem to think that's a good idea. And that can mess up the town clerk, because if they register as a new voter, for example, they get a new ID number. And if they've already sent in their absentee ballot, then their absentee ballot is voided. So it becomes a very difficult process to try to make sure that we don't void their absentee ballot by accident because they're multiple registering. I've had one registration I did over the weekend. The person registered at the DMV one day and 2 days later online.
Yeah, I've had that too. It's amazing.
And it's kind of like, okay, now we got multiple pieces of paper to deal with and decide, okay, what did the voter really want? And I've got stuff coming in out of sequence where the DMV registration they registered online. The DMV was done. I processed the DMVs first, and then all of a sudden I wind up with their online registration, and it predates the DMV registration. And so it gets complicated. And then you get all kinds of, we have one weird one where, you know, the person's trying to decide whether they live in New York or not. And we're not going to let them vote in Madison if they live in New York. We have a lot of forum fishing going on.
Yeah.
Well, the bottom line, from my understanding, is we have the A team, the town clerk A team, and the rest of the gang. So we are very lucky to have all you guys. Thanks for all your hard work.
You're welcome.
We appreciate that. Thank you. And I just want to add too, one of the things that I've always said is, you know, we know how to do this election in case we go manual. And we did today. The CVRS system was down. we had 113 applications come in, and I did not want to hold those up and waste a day where, of mailing them to somebody and lose that day. So we went manual until the system came on, probably at about 5 o'clock tonight. And then my staff entered all that information. So yeah, I've just got a great staff here that's really dedicated and doing a great job, but we do know how to go manual, and we hope that that doesn't happen again. And if it does, that then affects what happens and gets turned over and when to the registrars. So, there's a lot involved here in my office to get it prepared before we can even turn it over to the registrars. So
We make break points when we prepare poll books. So I have a poll book actually prepared already at a break point on Sunday. So if CVRS has a problem, we can at least administer based on Sunday.
Grateful.
We'll do one on Wednesday, and then we'll do the official poll book. And when I was talking to the Secretary of State's representative today, it was like, well, don't you check the red A's in the book? And I said, no, because they come out of CVRS. She says, well, don't you check them? How do you know that everybody's there? And I say, Nancy told me. and Nancy locks them up, and we've already gone through, we've done our transfer documents on, I think, about 80% of the ballots already. So they're set to go to counting, but they can't go to counting until a little bit later.
Right.
So, but they're already in the vault, set transfer documents, evidence documents, and if they have to go back in. And so I think that Madison is tighter with the town clerk than a lot of towns because of the way Nancy runs her operation in terms of confirming that the ballots in the ballot box or in the boxes we get are the red A's are in the system. And that was something that she put in, I think, quite a few years ago when we decided that, okay, we'd go through the pain of using CVRS for the absentee ballots because the red A's are put on by the system. We don't have to manually put them on. And if you've ever tried to put on manual red A's for 5,000 A's, that's not an easy job. And there's a lot of towns out there, I'm sure, that are just getting ballots back and they're not really keeping track of whether the person is registered, not registered. They just know they got a ballot back. Yeah. And they're going to have a terrible time when they start, because when they start going through their official voter lists, a lot of people aren't going to show up.
Bill, who in the Secretary of State's office did you talk to? Sorry.
I talked to Shirley
Surgeon.
Surgeon. Yeah, not the fish.
Surgeon.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
And so we've had.
Yeah.
And
I know you've been kind of working closely with them to try to get this whole process figured out. So.
Yeah, she was unaware of the statute that said I couldn't release partial returns.
That was a little scary.
Hmm.
And as I told her, if you can give me the legal justification, I might consider doing something Tuesday night. But from the practical point of view, I don't want to use the tabulators because to count what would amount to 1,500 ballots when I got 5,000 yet to go, and lock up the tabulator for 14 days and only have 3 left. That's a pretty risky move.
Well, let's hope we're not hand counting those 5,000 ballots. So
no, hopefully not. But
yes.
we have had tabulators break.
Yeah. Well, I think we probably need to move on. We've got a lot to get through on our agenda still, but I thank you very much. And obviously you've got a long week ahead of you. And reach out to my office if you need any additional resources or support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. I've learned a lot about the voting process in the last couple of weeks. So.
I never knew. I didn't know what a CVRS was. So.
Yeah. Oh, that one I've known about just because it's the computers are set up and where we normally hold our meetings right now to access it. So
there you go.
And we'll tell you
people
the
don't show up at
CVRS is a little bit later.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so let's moving on. Item number 8 is discuss and take action to approve a donation in the amount of $10,000 from Neighbor to Neighbor to help families in need of assistance due to COVID-19. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved, with our gratitude for their continued support and generosity.
I'll second that.
Great. I mean, I at first I saw this and I thought it was a mistake because we just did one of these, and Lauren said, no, it's not a mistake.
That's
It's
amazing.
incredible. So back-to-back approvals for $10,000 donations. So Scott, if you just want to real quickly, anything unique about this versus the other 10,000 or?
No, it's the same amount.
Okay.
I think I had reported at the last Board of Selectmen meeting that we were looking at this, the previous $10,000 donation as kind of a winding down of this program. And a neighbor did not want us to wind down the program. Didn't want us to change anything as well in terms of how we were distributing the money and how we were processing the applications. So we said, okay, that's, they wanted to fund us more to keep it going and keep us doing what we were doing. They don't care if, you know, the same families continue to request or apply, as long as they're following the applications for what we're asking and it's still within reason. So again, grateful to neighbor, they just continue to step up. And we just continue to tell people that this is here. If they need it, Madison residents can apply.
Great. I mean, I think it's fantastic that we can keep offering this to the community.
Yeah.
So thank you once again.
Yep.
And I think at one point it'd be nice to have them talk to the board more about their overall organization. I don't know if in the past you've had that before, but I think it just might be helpful to know all about their program or their foundation and this particular fund and all the assistance they provided. So
Anytime when you guys have a lighter agenda.
yeah, I know. It's never light.
Is that ever, Scott?
I'm sure they would appreciate that and happy to put that together whenever you want.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks a lot, Scott. So I guess
thank
all
you.
in favor to approve a donation in the amount of $10,000 from neighbor to neighbor to help families in need of assistance due to COVID-19, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
for hanging in there.
Bet.
Next item is discuss and take action to approve a line item transfer request from Beach and Recreation, the amount of $3,300 to fund increase in cable and internet costs.
So moved.
Second,
Second, okay, great. And I think this was basically what had been budgeted was not adequate. And Scott, is there any mystery here? Is it just the cost went up or did we add some service?
Sure. We, as I indicated on the request form, we had some increases due to the security cameras.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yep.
And we needed to add in, which I didn't anticipate when we did the budget for the new maintenance facility. That's going to be their anchor as far as communications with the town. It's all remote. So they're at the maintenance building down at the Surf Club garage for the staff.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this? No? Okay, all in favor to approve the line item transfer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Next one, also Scott, discuss and take action to approve a request from the Beach and Recreation Department to release funds in the amount of $10,677.34 out of the Harold Strong account to expand the existing sound system at Strong Field.
So moved. Second.
Second, great. Okay, great. So Scott, maybe just spend a second what the Harold Strong Fund is. And I actually walked around Strong Field with Larry Ciotti and members of the board of the Harold Strong or the Strong Field board of directors to just see what some of these improvements would be going for. But if you want to just give a quick second what the fund is.
Sure. We currently have $170,000 left in the Harold Strong account, which was bequeathed to the town to build Strong Field. And we've used it various times to improve upon Strong Field with lights, turf maintenance, and the last big portion was to help with the Strong Center Fund thrust to build the Strong Center. We have come to the conclusion at the request of the Strong Center group, board of directors, who Larry Ciotti, Duo Dickinson, et cetera. They're amazing efforts to get this facility built. We found that there are some dead spots with the sound system. One being the plaza end and the other being the scoreboard end. And they requested for us to install speakers on the light poles at either end of the grandstand to help broadcast the games when they're being played. And the request is for the exact amount, which is, I believe you have the quote before you as well, in order to do that. I think it'll be a good improvement. There may be something in the future if we don't cover the plaza as well as is desired. This is an attempt, but the next move would be to actually install speakers within the plaza on the buildings. So people within the plaza at the concession stand, et cetera, will be able to hear even more clearly. But
This was budgeted already, Scott. Is that what I'm understanding? It's
no, this is coming out of the Harold Strong Fund, which we have 170,000 left after the town contribution towards Strong Center project. So we will still have 159,000 left in the account.
And the board of the Strong Center
Has requested that.
it has requested that we use the funds. They had a long list of different things that kind of need to be repaired and fixed, and they're doing some of those. Public Works is doing a few things, just maintenance kind of things. And then this was the one thing they said that they would, they were advocating using the Strong Center, the Strong account to pay for the improvement.
Correct.
And I think that there was a letter that they made the request in there. I'm trying to,
I think it was an email.
Yeah.
Peggy.
Yeah. And I think the idea that the fund had been used quite a bit, and then they took because of the building of the Strong Center, and then they took a kind of hiatus the last couple of years, and the town has not really tapped into it for any improvements in order to rebuild some of the principal amount in the fund. Correct, Scott?
Correct.
So this is the first time that we would be going into that fund again in quite a while, since the Strong Center project had been done.
I mean, we definitely did not want to deplete that fund. So hopefully we won't have to tap it again, but because we want to build the interest and leave the legacy that Harold Strong left to the town. So
any more questions for Scott on this? No? Okay, great. All in favor of approving a request from Beach and Rec to release funds in the amount of $10,677.34 out of the Harold Strong account, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Next item is number 11. So I guess we can have Sam join us. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Department in the amount of $6,000 to fund a fire inspector for 8 hours a week from January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So discussion. This is relating to adding additional hours for a fire inspector. I do know that we have a huge backlog of inspections this year because of COVID. There were a lot of restrictions on what the fire inspector can do. And also Sam's department has been a critical part of just our whole COVID management and emergency management operation. So there's not been a lot of time available to deal with, more traditional routine fire inspectors work. And so this would be adding some money so that they can bring in somebody who recently got certified, I guess it would be called, to do fire inspector work for 8 hours a week for half a year. So Sam, I'll let you talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so this is, and actually I asked in the last year's budget, I asked for this, and it was a total of $12,000 for the year. But it's mainly somebody has to have gone through the state fire marshal class to be certified as a fire marshal, deputy fire marshal, fire inspector. And it's more or less, right now, we're kind of back at square one. Practically every business in town needs to be re-inspected. We have been doing some, some people's liquor license have come up, and we've been doing them to keep the restaurants going. A lot of the residential places that were identified that kind of prompted this request last time, we haven't been going into them because of COVID. So I would imagine after the first of the year that hopefully this subsides, and that's where the backlog is going to be. So this inspector would primarily be to get all these residential occupancies up to date, and they're supposed to be inspected annually, the residential ones. So that's about it. And then, several towns have been struggling with this as well, because in 2009, Bridgeport was sued. There's a wrongful death suit against Bridgeport. There was a fire in 2009 where a mother and 3 kids died, and I believe it went to court, the trial court, under the statute of 52-557N, said the town had immunity, or the city had immunity, and they couldn't be sued. And they gave a summary judgment to the city for the lawsuit. It went to the appellate court. The appellate court overturned it. And in 2013, the Supreme Court said that the town could be considered reckless if they're not conducting the inspections according with the statutory requirements that are set forth by the state. So that's kind of a quick summary. You guys can look it up and read it. It's a long summary long interpretation. But I don't believe the city ended up having to pay any money on it. The contractor that renovated the buildings had to pay because there was some code violations that they weren't picked up by either the housing authority down there in Bridgeport or the fire marshal's office. So that's and there's other cities have used this to get inspectors on, because technically we're liable for these if something were to happen and we had a fatality. So
I think that Sam and I talked about, beyond the June 30th, 2021 date, to continue to carry forward these hours will be certainly discussed through the budget process. Right now, I think it's very well justified that we need these hours. There's just such a backlog in his department that we really do need to kind of chip away at it as quickly as we can. And now that we do have somebody that's certified, it's good to get going. And then we're going to reevaluate, any kind of longer term commitment through the budget process for next year.
So I think, my first comment is really one of process. Sam, thanks for calling out that this was an add-on request that you'd asked for in the last budget cycle, and this board took it up and ultimately didn't recommend that expense moving forward. When we see a mid-budget year ad like this, and it's a topic that we've discussed as a board, I know we all individually remember every single thing we talked about, but just in the odd chance that we didn't, when the request comes through, if it could be noted that this was a previously discussed budget item for the board, so that we can start the discussion with our heads about why we didn't approve it the first time around. And since it is an operating expense, I'm going to ask, is there a way for us to manage this through the balance of this year in a line item transfer and stay within the operating budget that we originally asked for?
I mean, I don't have any extra money in my budget, so I don't know.
I think he's got one of the leaner budgets that we have. Remember, he's emergency management director. While we've been in a state of emergency since April. So that's why I think, to me, this is going to be needed, really related to COVID, to start facilitating a lot of the inspections that still need to happen at a time where they haven't been able to do their work. I think that's why he had chosen to bring this forward. I think he still is going to make a strong case, I'm sure, through the budget process that these extra hours should stay in for the next year. But by supporting this now, there's no commitment by this board to fund anything beyond the current, this specific appropriation. I don't know, Sam, if you want to add anything to that.
No, that's in, so I did lose a deputy fire marshal. He took an assistant chief's job in Greenwich. So he's going to be working down there 5 days a week. And so, he'd given 12 hours a week. And so we're going to do some adjustments. I need to replace him plus, these extra hours. The extra hours were needed beforehand, before COVID hit. But they're really going to be needed now once we get back into these residential occupancies. Hopefully anticipating, right after the first year, we'll be able to get in there.
Sam, will there be any incremental revenue from suddenly being able to conduct all these inspections?
So there probably would be some, probably about $2,000. We charge annually, we charge $25 per occupancy for an inspection. If they did 3 a day for the 26 weeks, it, probably come up to about a couple $1,000s. Don't forget that's in the daytime, it's only the 8 hours a week. So it's 1 day a week for the 26 weeks.
And how long do you think it'll take to get through the backlog, given this request, Sam?
I'm not sure. It all depends on how much other stuff comes in. If there's new construction coming in,
Another hurricane, another
hurricanes,
pandemic.
yeah, like that, fires and
Details.
everything else.
Well, how did you?
My goal is to have it cleaned up this year so that we can get on the annual basis. But it's going to be an ongoing event. Ongoing annual, inspections for all these years, for the years to come in the future.
How did you decide on 8 hours a week?
I just figured how many inspections we were doing and added on. I'm thinking in the beginning he could do at least 3, and then once we get these automated tablets going, he might be able to do 4 or 5. So I just, added on those extra inspections to what we were already doing. I should have those numbers in front of me, but I don't have them right now. But there's about 700 buildings or in places that need to be inspected. And some of them are biannual, some of them are triannual, but all the residential ones are annual. And there's probably about, I'm guessing about 250 of those. Because what happened was there was some apartment buildings that beforehand were like Concord Meadows. We weren't inspecting those because, the way the fire code was written, the previous fire marshal didn't think we needed to inspect them. They didn't fall within the fire code. So after a few fire calls over there and we started looking at them, and they said, I think these meet the definition of the fire code. So we had the state come down. We went around to several buildings to identify which ones had to be inspected by the fire code and which ones didn't. And so there's Clipper Ship Row, there's Concord Meadows, there's, and I know there's a couple apartment buildings that are being slated to be built. Like the Hearth, all the nursing homes, all the restaurants have to be inspected every year. There's a lot of 3 families that have popped up. There's several up in North Madison. Some of them are going to have to go through the zoning process, so I'm not sure they're going to stay 3 families. So a lot of those will get taken off, but we found a lot of things that are being converted without permits. So it is a process to catch up with all these things. The problem is, it's not just one inspection. It's probably 5 or 6 or 7 inspections to get compliance going back and forth. People don't want to do it. They don't want to spend the money. And I'm sure now with everything that's going on, they really don't want to spend the money. So it takes a process to get them all caught up.
So any other questions?
Not questions, but I'm fully supportive of this. This seems like a no-brainer given the state of where we are right now with COVID. So I guess I'm hopeful that we can push this forward. It's $6,000 in the grand scheme of things. It feels like
Two or four with revenue.
there you go. There you go. It doesn't feel like it's a big deal.
I think, my concern was one more of process.
Fair.
We'd specifically taken up this topic. I understand the world changed since we had that conversation, and the need has become more acute. But I'm worried that we started, a dangerous precedent by coming in mid-cycle and adding into the operating budget things that we previously had specifically said no.
So just for an FYI, the Board of Finance did add it back in until they had to relook at the budget again. Then they slashed it out.
Yeah, they did.
So when I went to the Board of Finance, we made a presentation. They did add it back in to 12,000.
And I did speak to actually the Board of Finance chair about this. And I think her concern was more directed if this was a long-term commitment. And clearly we're not doing that. We're just doing a specific need for related to COVID. And I'm sure Sam will be putting it forward for next year's budget, and that will be part of a active discussion I think we'll have. So I guess, everybody okay voting? Okay. All in favor of approving a special appropriation request from Emergency Management Director in the amount of $6,000, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? No? Okay, great. All right, Sam. Another one. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Director in the amount of $9,500 for satellite internet for the Emergency Operations Center. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And this is something that also came out of the tropical storm Isaias, where we found a issue that we had never encountered before, and we lost all our internet service, which really ended up being quite a big deal. I think we didn't realize it until it happened. So Sam, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so what happened was the Comcast link went down for about 8 hours until they got their power back up to whichever site is powering up the town hall. So the town campus was totally dead for internet. I think even the police station had a problem, and like I said, it was for about 8 hours. This included all the email and everything else. And that was our primary way we were communicating with Eversource. Fortunately, I had another Gmail account we had set up through the emergency management that I ended up using, offsite on the tablets that had service. But this is a satellite backup, so doesn't have any wires. It's strictly goes, the dish would go on the building, and that's really what a lot of the cost is. $3,500 for it as a service, and I really didn't have much time to negotiate with the guy, so we might be able to find another plan that's a little bit cheaper. But the installation cost, the dish and the installation and all that is about $6,000, and that's just a one-time fee.
And this is something that other towns do have backup. It's kind of, I would say, a best practice, right? Because I think it also, what surprises me, this affected dispatch, correct?
Yes.
I couldn't do any emergency communications because those are all web-based. And we had problems communicating with Eversource. So it was, this is probably the first time this has happened, right? For this extensive period of time. Yeah.
Yep. And then it also, we could, through the fiber link between the two buildings, we could bring the police station up on this. So they could use this as a backup for their internet as well if we lose Comcast again. So rather than putting a satellite dish on their building as well.
Sam, would this provide any capability for non-emergency situations? Would we be making use of it?
So Art was going to look at that. You could use it for non-emergency situations. It's there, it's live all the time. So Art was going to look at that, and we did have a discussion, and he is on board with was doing this. So he was actually looking at different ways that he could use it throughout the years to make it, you know, usable instead of just 5 times a year when we have a storm, if we need it. I know it's a lot of money to have for just in case, but when you need it, you need it. You need to have the connectivity.
Any more questions on this? No more questions? We good voting? I know Erin blocked out, so I'm assuming she's okay voting.
I'm okay voting.
Okay. All in favor of approving a special appropriation from the Emergency Management Department, the amount of $9,500 for satellite internet, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Sorry,
Finally, last one.
I'm
One-
parenting. I'm parenting. as
That's
I-
okay, I get it. I just didn't want to not include you. Number 13 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request from the Emergency Management Department in the amount of $5,000
Geez, Sam.
for emergency management software for storm data tracking.
So this is a
Wait,
VOC software.
we need a,
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so moved.
okay, and a
Second.
second. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so this is also something that we became aware of through the last storm. Go ahead, Sam.
So this is a software that Guilford uses, and it's more of an automated process where it keeps track of the roads and it documents damage. So if a police officer, a fire officer, or firefighter was out with a truck, they could take a picture of damage with a tablet. It timestamps it, and it gives it the lat and long that FEMA requires. So once we gather all this information, it's easy just to download into FEMA. It also keeps track of where roads are closed, where blocked, so that responders can look at a map and see the best route to get around if they need to. And I did find out that it can be used for the public reporting, whether we can make a form and they could take pictures as well and attach them to the form and send them in. But it's a very powerful program, and we're only using one part of it. And it also does all our ICS forms. It automatically fills out the ESF 12 form that we send into Eversource for block roads. It would automatically notify Public Works if there's trees down on roads without wires, so they could go clean them up. So we did have something similar with the Google Sheets and Docs, but someone had to sit there and run it. So this is more of an automated system where nobody has to run it. Once it goes in, and then the dispatchers will have access to it. All the emergency responders will have access to it. And then we also can make an interactive map for the public to see if, where damage is. So if the next day they need to get around or get out of town or get back into town, they can do that as well.
You're talking on mute, Maggie.
Saying having that GPS capability tied into the report, I think it will be extremely helpful, rather than I've seen the Google Docs. It's just a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So this is a much more sophisticated way of tracking all this stuff. And then
Have we talked to Guilford and gotten feedback on the system that it's worth
Yes.
the expenditure?
And even Chief Show from there said if you guys would like a presentation on it, he'd be more than happy to go through it. They actually use it to run their whole department. But that's a lot more than $5,000. But all we really need it for right now is emergency management. It is expandable if we find other uses for it.
okay.
And I think there was something else.
Any more
Good.
questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All in favor of approving a special appropriation? Oh, sorry, you had.
I guess I'm just trying to understand. I mean, I'm going back to the fire inspector thing, Sam, and I feel like if the situation is as dire as it sounds, shouldn't that take precedent over putting money into this other software, which seems like it's a nice to have, but not an essential to have? And could this be made part of next year's budget? And should we be putting more money into the fire inspector?
Well, so it is a nice to have thing, but this last storm with IESIS, we did have a lot of problems responding to calls. The police department, the ambulance, they were going to medical calls where they were having to reroute 2, 3, 4 times.
But the storm was a little bit of an anomaly. I mean, we haven't had a storm like that.
But they're
Not
becoming more
really.
prevalent.
We've had 5 in the last 10 years where we.
Well, I know, but do you think we're gonna have another one in 6 months?
No, but
I don't know.
saying 5 in 10 years.
You know what? There's
significant
another one in the Gulf right now. There was just the Epsilon just went past us on the east.
I
You know, we just fortunately we just haven't been in the right path. You know, it's a very active tropical season this year. And actually this other one that's coming up is we're supposed to get the remnants of that. It's supposed to go right over us.
Right. But we know for a fact we have a backlog of places.
We do. We have we know we have a backlog, and the other one is a chance. But like back in 2011 and 12, we never thought we were going to get hit with back-to-back hurricanes either, and it happened.
Well, have you looked at other emergency management software, or just this one?
I just looked. There is other ones out there that we kind of looked at are a little bit more cumbersome, but you know, Guilford has had such success with this that, you know, they recommended it and it worked well for them in their storm. So, I mean, we just went with something that people had proven, basically.
I mean, I think that the volume of residents contacting and wanting to know if we had records of trees down or wires down, I think this is going to be a real help in terms of like communicating with the public as well. Understandingly, we don't always have hurricanes, but we do have power outages a lot in Madison. So I think it's going to be used more than just when a big storm comes. It's going to be small storms where we're losing power as well. And it does allow the public an opportunity to report, which right now is a bit of a cumbersome process, right? It goes through dispatch, and then dispatch has to you have to put it into your spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole reporting process to Eversource. So this would kind of streamline some of that.
So this $5,000 would include public input of data and communication?
So it wouldn't be automatically inputted. So it would be, there's a link you could put on the website where the public could actually take a picture and report it. We'd have them fill out a form. And I believe we already have a form up there for complaints and stuff like that we could, you know, use. And the big thing with this is they can attach a picture with it if they want. Then it would come in, it would go to email. We'd have to figure out who's going to be the clearinghouse for that. Any emergency type stuff, like if there's arc and wires, they still need to call 911. This is not going to replace reporting from 911. But there is a map once, there is an interactive map that, and this, I just found this out this afternoon because I was asked a question. I wasn't sure the capabilities, so I called the person with the representative for the software company, and he informed me about all this extra stuff that we could do with it for the public. So they could pull up the map and they could actually see what road is blocked, where there's damage down.
And whether they report goes to the system, because I think that was part of the problems we had previously is people report things and then they were unsure if there was actual, do you know that this is on my road? Or do you know, because they don't get any kind of way to track their complaints, right? If they call into dispatch, that's it. They call it in and they're done, right?
Right.
Do you anticipate additional funds being needed to get the functionality to where you'd like it to be?
No, but this is an annual, an annual cost.
So it'd just be part of your budget then?
Yeah, it's not a one-time, a one-time thing. It's 5,000 annual. If we want to expand, they do offer a CAD interface, so we could hook it up to the dispatch center directly. I don't know how much that costs, but it is expandable, and it all depends on how much you want to spend on it. Like I said, Guilford uses this software to run their daily operations at the fire department.
I think we have two options. We can vote on it tonight, yay or nay, or we could have, Sam mentioned having the guy who is the software guy or the Guilford guy come and show it to us, and we can look at it and have a deeper conversation.
Well, it seems to me if we approve this, we're kind of locked in. We're gonna
That's what
have
I'm saying. So I think it's an either or. I think it's an either or.
Oh, so you would table,
Yeah, table it now and have
to
the
the
guy
next
come and
meeting.
present it to us or show it to us.
Okay, I mean, I trust Sam's judgment, but if the board would rather see the presentation, we can do that, certainly.
I don't know that we're going to be in a position to make a better decision on this than Sam. I think, maybe picking up a little bit on what Aaron was saying is we're increasing the budget here. These aren't one-time expenses. And I think we just need to remember that before we've started the budget process, where we're increasing the budget. I believe that these are needed things, but I also believe that we don't have a bottomless pocket of money for the next budget cycle. So I think we just need to be sensitive as we move forward with our budgeting that we're already making some decisions and commitments for next year.
But maybe to that point, Bruce, I think it's a tremendous point. But I think if we're making commitments for additions, maybe we're also, as we're going through the process, looking for opportunities for improvements as well and reducing the budget in other areas to maybe compensate.
I'm always down with that.
Yeah.
But I also think that, remember, in emergencies, losing power is also, something that impacts the entire community, and it hurts businesses. So the quicker we can respond to get things moving and open up roads and get power going, it's also a benefit to the community. That's all. So I kind of look at it for $5,000. It means that we're going to be more responsive and people are going to be able to a more efficient process to clearing roads and improving electrical service. I think it's worth it. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and for me, the headline is that this is going to allow us to respond to people in need during these events and in a much quicker and more efficient manner. And I think really, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really the killer app portion of this app, and is that you're going to be able to get to people who need help right away by having it all mapped out.
Right. So instead of driving down a normal path you would to go one address and find that it's blocked halfway, then have to reroute and then find that that's blocked halfway, you'd be able to, before you leave the station, look at where the maps are and make your path up to the house where you're going, and it would save a lot of time.
Hmm.
And the best thing is it's once it's logged in by someone in the field, it's automatic. It's put up there. It's someone back at the EOC doesn't have to mark it.
It'd be great to have a demonstration of the software anyway. I mean, even not to table this for that purpose, but even to your point, Peggy, the public might like to see that because, like you said, I mean, this is going to be, sounds like it's going to have a tremendous impact on our ability to respond to emergencies. So I think people would probably be very interested to see that.
So I'm sure I probably might want to set something up for the Board of Finance. I have to go to the Board of Finance anyway, so.
That's right. There's always another stop on the road. And we're nicer than the Board of Finance.
I could probably set that up, and then you guys could log in and look at it if you want.
Sure.
Sounds good. All right, let's vote.
Okay.
All right, all in favor to approve a special appropriation request for emergency management in the amount of $5,000 for emergency management software, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No? Okay, Sam. So.
That's it. I think I'm done.
Yeah, no
done.
more, Sam? Come on.
My God, and I feel
I don't want to press my luck.
This is the night of yes.
Why not? Just throw one more in there.
Okay, so the next one Oh, God.
We move this as one, as
Yeah.
one vote. So I'll move that we discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation as outlined in items 1 through 7 due to expenses incurred by Tropical Storm Isaias.
Second.
Okay, great. All right, discussion. I think John is on the phone. Obviously, these are all things that are going to be submitted to FEMA for reimbursement. And so the hope is that we will get a chunk of this back. And I think the idea of having all the detailed breakdown, because it affects all these different departments. Stacy just thought this was the better way to do it versus a lump. I guess you couldn't do a lump sum, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can't do it as a lump, but also the way that the charter reads, it only allows for any department to have special appropriations in aggregate for the fiscal year in the amount of $50,000 before needing a town meeting. So if we had done this under one department, it would have triggered any other requests that they made from now until the end of the fiscal year to go to a town meeting. And that wouldn't have been fair to any of the departments involved when this really are expenses from several different departments.
And also the last one, this $35,000 does kick Public Works. And that's why we have another line item about the $35,000. So because Public Works, we had to do the truck. I think that was the vehicles. All the vehicles that we've been approved, the special appropriations for vehicles have been running through Public Works. So this additional expense because of the storm has kicked them into that over $50,000 threshold. So John, I think that, I mean, are there specific questions on this? Are people pretty understanding of what's here and this is all related to the storm, or do we need to dig into it in detail? No?
I have one editorial suggestion. The documents all reference Hurricane Isaias.
Right. That fair
so
point. Should say
I don't-
tropical storm.
I don't know if that impacts the whoever
FEMA designation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody says, oh, we can't pay it because it wasn't a hurricane.
It's like not filling in your ballot correctly, right?
Yeah. Well, this just shows what we have, but Stacy is very seasoned and experienced, and so is Sam in terms of doing FEMA requests. So I'm sure that they will make sure that everything is accurately portrayed in that. So I guess all in favor then of approving the motion as read by Bruce, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, thank you. And hopefully we'll get this back. And so that leads me to the next one, which is basically discuss and take action to approve that the Board of Finance is authorized in its discretion to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $35,000 from Public Works Department to fund brush removal at the bulky wayside due to debris removed from storm cleanup. This approval will be in place of town meeting approval rules. So what this does is, because we are under the declaration of emergency still, and we cannot hold a town meeting, it allows once the Board of Finance approves, that's the final approval process versus having to go to town meeting. And the reason, as we mentioned, that we have to go to town meeting is because of we're now over $50,000 for Public Works this year. So does everybody understand that? Because that took me a few times actually when Lauren explained it to me. I'm like, what? And so this will go to Board of Finance, and then they will be able to vote on this as the final approval for the special appropriation for Public Works. Okay?
Are we looking for a motion?
Yep.
Okay,
Sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right. Boy, you got off easy, John.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Sam tired us out.
I know. I think we're all, meanwhile, the executives, hopefully those guys are still hanging around. My Zoom session, can I extend it? Because I had it from 8 to 9, Lauren. So once I log in, I can, so let's get there real quick. I think we can get there.
Yeah.
The budget workshop schedule is the next thing. So I just ask you to review that. I glanced at it. It seemed reasonable. It's the same process we went through last year, right? In terms of the joint meetings, some of the joint meetings, and which I think went pretty well. I thought that worked well. So, and I didn't see any holidays snuck in there somehow. So does anybody have any concerns on that?
Nope.
And if you did, I think the Board of Finance actually voted on this already, but always, if you look at it and.
No, they
Oh, no,
didn't
we just
actually
looked at it.
vote.
We just,
Yep.
yeah. So you still have a chance since there's not been any voting. So if you take a look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I'm, away, or I guess no one's traveling these days. So, and with Zoom, you can still be here and participate.
Lucky us.
So, all right, so we'll move on. Number 17, appointments and resignations. These are both appointments. So I'd like a motion to appoint Jennifer Tyndall to the Solid Waste Disposal Committee for a term to expire January 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. And this is to the basically the committee that we share with Guilford, and each town has 3 seats. And so we're hopefully getting close to filling our 3 seats now. I think we still have 1 opening, right? So she's eager to get involved and talk about the future of that facility. So all in favor of appointing Jennifer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, and Jennifer, thank you for offering to serve. And then the next one is a motion to appoint Cecily Barron to the Rockland Preserve Committee alternates for a term to expire January 1st, 2024. A motion?
Second.
All right, second, great, okay. And this is for an alternate position. And welcome Cecily, she lives in the neighborhood, so I know she was very eager to get involved and volunteer on this committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Welcome Cecily to the Rockland Preserve Committee. Okay, next is the tax refunds. Can I get a motion to approve the tax?
Uh-oh. That was like a mic drop moment.
I had it and now I've misplaced the page.
You just read the number off, Lauren. Do you have it? We can just
Am I frozen, guys?
Yeah, you froze.
Oh.
Now you're back.
$26,220.03.
That was hysterical.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. All right, citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens that hung on here?
There are a few, but no one is raising their hand.
Okay, great. All right. So I guess I'd like to then have a motion to move to executive session and invite in Lauren Rhines and Floyd Dugas and Brian Lima from Bertram Moses. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Okay. Second, somebody?
Second.
Second, okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, we will move to executive session, and for the public's, your meeting will be suspended, and we are going to be leaving the meeting and joining a separate executive session meeting. So the link should work, and hopefully I can expand the time on it. So.
And we have to come back to this one. Is that how it works afterwards?
Yeah, just real quickly to adjourn.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Bye. Okay, we are back. And I think we just need one more person, right, Bruce? And then we can do an motion to adjourn.
Sorry, I'm muted.
We just need another person for a quorum.
I think we can probably do it with 3, yeah.
They're all coming on.
Okay. Well, at least this worked this time.
Yeah.
It's shockingly well, actually.
So, all right, great. So I think all we need to do, folks, is do a quick motion to adjourn our meeting from, we're out of executive session now, and a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Right.
Have a rest of your evening. Thank